Hello and welcome to Google Cloud Next, and I'm joined by Logan Kilpatrick. Logan, great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited. This is a super cool setup. It's awesome to be like literally live in the venue right now.
Exactly, we're sitting right with hundreds of people around us and stuff like that. Walking around, what have you seen today that's been interesting?
Yeah, it feels like the era of agents is upon us. I think this morning's keynote you heard from TK and from many other folks about just like how much, on the Google Cloud side, how much progress has been made from a platform perspective to bring agents in all these new ways. And so it feels like it's being embraced by the ecosystem. It's being embraced by Google and our partners. And it's interesting to like see it actually work. I think there was like
that's what I was about to say.
12 months ago we were at Next and it was like people like sort of hypothesizing about what the future might look like.
There was hype, but no sort of.
It's delivering, which I think is really, really exciting. And I think we're at sort of still inning or chapter number one of that actually playing out of like what does the world look like when agents actually deliver on the mission that I think they can.
It is really fascinating, talking to people. And one of the things I'm hearing, and I'm sure you're the same, is that there are just lots of these use cases that I never would have thought of. Yeah. And people are getting Gemini to do all this amazing stuff because it's multimodal, because it can, stringing with a simple harness, putting these things together maybe with a sandbox and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you're sort of one of the key people at AI Studio. I think we agreed that we'll say it's your baby, right? That's been a really interesting ride. Like it's been around. I think originally it was called Maker Suite.
Yeah.
And you've been adding a lot to it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of what some of the big things you've been, working on recently there?
Yeah. So AI Studio has been, I think we sort of. I need to come up with a better way to describe this, but we have sort of the different eras of the journey. I think it was like originally it was like prompt to prototype, get your API key, sort of get off to the races, test the models a little bit. I think we sort of crossed the chasm probably 18 months ago to like really help people go to production with what they're building. And I think the takeaway from that was like we can help so many people do more than just get an API key and sort of kick around the models and then go off and build. Like, why not actually help them build the thing that they want directly in AI Studio? And I think the whole vibe coding wave that's happened. So we added this build tab in AI Studio actually last year at I/O, and we're coming up on a year now of sort of pushing in that direction to see what the interesting thing.
So why don't you describe that? I'm amazed that I still find people that they don't really understand what the build tab is.
Yeah.
And you've been adding amazing stuff to it later on. So how about you start off telling us a little bit about it, and then we can talk about what's new and stuff.
For sure. So it's a full-on vibe coding experience. Right. So like you can literally go from like prompt to a working app to adding a database to actually deploying it using Cloud Run behind the scenes. In like minutes, which is really cool. And a lot of it is actually free as well, which is really exciting. So we have a huge, like millions of people building apps in AI Studio using all these services. And they're not like spending a ton of money in order to make it happen, which is something that we think a lot about, is trying to make sure that the technology is accessible in the hands of this like next generation of builders, which is really exciting. And to your point, the team is shipping lots of stuff. So we just landed a bunch of really cool things like design previews. So as you sort of ask for your app, and you can kick it off right now if folks go to ai.studio/build, ask for your app, and you can sort of see a bunch of different iterations of the UI and click through those while it's building, and then choose which direction you want to go in. Another one, this is like a classic reimagination of the I'm feeling lucky button in Google search. So like we're trying to solve this inspiration problem, which is like people want to build. They're like, I'm so excited. I hear the technology can do all these cool things. I don't know where to get started. You can come to AI Studio, you can go to the build tab, you can click one button, and we'll sort of come up with your first app idea for you, have it connected to the Google ecosystem, and then you can go build that thing. It's really exciting.
What I love is that you can also sort of say, I'm lucky, I'm going for I'm lucky, but I want it to have Nano Banana, I want an image model, I want a database, I want some auth.
Exactly.
And it will just take all of those things and run with it.
And we've gone one step further too, which is like if you start typing out your idea, we just landed this. It's called this feature called Tap Tap Tab. And as you start to type out your prompt, we'll use sort of like traditional autocomplete, except it's using Flash behind the scenes to like come up with the extension of your idea. So you say like, I want an app that uses AI to help me organize, and then AI will sort of complete that thing. You can press tab, and then it'll go the next step. and then it'll go the next step. And that's where the tap, tap, tap comes in, because you just keep, the model will help create your prompt generatively, which is really exciting. Because I think people have a hard time actually articulating the breadth of what they can actually do as you're building apps. And so I think this like helps meet people where they are as far as like trying to get their idea into a text box and bring it to life.
It's changing so quickly. One of the things I find is that stuff that just wouldn't work last year, perhaps with the previous generation models or something like that, people went and tried it last year and they're like, oh, well, that doesn't work, I'm never going to use it. It's kind of like, hey, did you use it in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
If not, go and check it out. That's what I find myself telling people. And also just, what seemed to take like, you needed a 20-page PRD before. Now, the model now is much more better at intuiting what it is that you want. The fact that you can sort of add in that, oh yeah, I want Firestore, or I want a database, or I want some auth and stuff like that. Is that what you guys are also seeing?
For sure. And so the model in AI Studio like has all this context about how to use Gemini, how to use Firebase, how to use Cloud Run to deploy things. And so as you ask for your idea, it has that context in the background, and it knows all the things that it's capable of and can sort of intelligently put them into place. So I like to say, we've given a more opinionated take on what it looks like to build an app, and I think it's there's trade-offs, but like it's helpful because it gets people to something that actually works and uses the technology faster than they'd otherwise be able to if you had to like literally start from scratch, no context, et cetera. So I think we continue to like, AI Studio is a story of like, we're taking an opinionated look at what it means to build a vibe coding platform. And we'll keep pushing in that direction.
That seems to be really smart though. Like I find, one of the things that I guess a few months ago when it didn't support Next.js, right?
Yeah.
So now just adding Next.js where, opinionated, I can say, look, I want you to build something, but I want it in Next.js. I want it to have a database. I want some auth, right? Okay, yeah. I kind of know now that I'm getting best practices on those things, and I can sort of go wild with it. Or more importantly, not so much me, but like I find other people that can't even code can do this. Right? This is like a whole thing that we can touch on as well, is that. But I find like, developers that have never done front end, go in there, boom, they're now amazed that they can build a pretty nice looking front end app. I think you're also integrating, like you said, the new design stuff. What's
Lots of design stuff in the works. I think we have like a whole slew of different things. The first one is design preview. So as you're building your app, you can actually iterate and it'll sort of show you a bunch of different options. Actually, once you are, and that's like while the app is doing the initial generation, we'll be rolling out soon the ability that like once you actually already have an app generated, give you multiple different like options as far as like other themes of like what could this app look like if you change a bunch of stuff. We have a bunch of like targeted sort of like edits rolling out. We have this like edit mode where you can sort of draw on the preview of your app, or you can like directly select elements and then like regenerate images or change different filters around things. So that will actually hopefully roll out, I think this week or early next week, something like that.
It seems like every week you've got something new.
I mean, it's honestly, I have a hard time. Credit to our team for pushing so hard and making all this stuff happen. I genuinely have a hard time keeping up with all the things that are happening because we're doing so much stuff, which is it's a good place to be in.
So that's good to hear from us outside. Like if you're having a hard time keeping up, that's good. Another thing actually that you didn't even mention was you've added voice. So the ability to actually sort of talk to it and sort of, I guess, prompt it and get stuff going just purely with voice now.
Yeah, so we have, the voice models, which we should also talk about, the text-to-speech models, the live models are incredible. And sort of, I think Gemini's really pushed the state of the art as far as audio capabilities. And we have a new sort of like Lyria music playground. We have a new text-to-speech playground. We have all the live models sort of rolling out across the ecosystem. But we also, in the vibe coding experience, we have this feature which I've come up with all these goofy names for things. It's called Yap-to-App. Yap-to-App. So you can go in and you can sort of just like say whatever random, garble of words and ideas that you have. And then the thing that we've done is we put Gemini, it's not just like a pure text-to-speech model. We've put Gemini in there to actually like formulate the idea that you are just putting together in a coherent way so the model can take action and actually bring that idea to life, fill in any blanks that you forgot to mention, or sort of like shape it in a way that's going to work. And so we've seen a ton of people using this, which is really exciting. I think beyond the I'm feeling lucky button, this like Yap-to-App experience is so popular. It's like the #2 most popular thing, which is awesome.
So what about mobile? Like one of the things that a lot of people are asking about is, okay, this is great, but I don't really need to make a website. I want to make an app. I want to put it up on the iOS App Store, or the Android, Google Play Store.
iOS App Store is sort of contentious.
I'm sure,
there's lots of conversations going on around there. We definitely have a lot of exciting stuff coming in the mobile space. The team has been pushing super hard to bring AI Studio to life on mobile. So we'll have more to share there soon. And it'll definitely be the first cut. Like I think the future for mobile for us is like, we want to let people build anywhere, wherever they are, for whatever platform they want.
Right.
And so mobile is obviously super important. Also, as you sort of think about like reaching this next 100 million user sort of like next gen developer audience, like a lot of those folks are on mobile. They're not on a web, laptop, desktop, whatever it is. So we need to go there as far as reaching those users. And lots of cool stuff on the Android side as well, collaborating with those teams. Lots of interesting things on potential on-device models to enable, which is also really exciting. The Gemma 4 models are incredible.
Awesome.
I saw a demo from our team of AI Studio Mobile running local models, which is really exciting. So I don't know if it'll make the cut for the initial release, but lots of cool things that we're poking around with, which is exciting.
So I'm curious to sort of chunk up a bit and ask you, okay, so we've got sort of vibe coding, right? And we know that sort of more traditional or older developers kind of were against that at the start. Like, there was a lot. And now we're hearing the term sort of agentic engineering, which sounds like a nice rebranding of vibe coding. And I can get it why people are against it last year, because you would get to a certain point and then you would reach bugs and you couldn't fix it or whatever. It does seem that's changed though, especially in the last few months. Like since Gemini 3 came out, what's your take on that?
Yeah, you're right. I think folks, for the right reasons, and actually like we feel this inside Google as well, sort of like there's a high bar for like landing code, especially in like production systems. And like even for AI Studio specifically, like what we've actually ended up doing is like there's a lot of folks, me, Amar, others in the team who are vibe coding things like in the actual AI Studio production agentic engineering, not vibe coding. And we're making changes to the product. And what we've had to do is like have a deeper partnership with our engineering team. So we actually have somebody now whose job is like, our members of the technical staff team goes and makes changes to AI Studio, gets it so that all the CI is passing, it's all green, we run the tests, things look good. And then we actually hand off to the engineering team. They take a bunch of these changes, they get them over the line, and they become the like owner and the steward of getting that code over the line and directly into the actual AI Studio code base. And I think this partnership model between folks who are like trying to vibe code and the actual like senior engineers who want to make sure that this thing is reliable and scalable, et cetera, I think works really well. And then the best part is like that person who's on the hook to like get a bunch of these agentically engineered changes into the code base is also responsible for like, how do we make sure that cycle is better? So like, what are the skills that we need to put in place? What is the infrastructure we need to build so that like we have better test coverage? We have all those things. So I think, we should probably do a blog post at some point, because I feel like there's lots of conversation about this, and I feel like our team's found a really nice sweet spot of like letting in new contributors to a production code base, while also like, it's Google, we're holding the bar for quality really high, with millions of like paying customers using this platform. So
it also sounds like the lessons that you learn from that are going to just improve for everyone, right? Not just for you guys doing it yourself. Like as you sort of learn that, the models maybe guide not well here or that kind of thing, it allows you to course correct and make things even better for higher level quality code.
100%.
That's really fascinating to hear. One of the things, so we were both at an event, private event yesterday. One of the things you said there, I really struck a note with me. You talked about, and I realized when you said this that I felt the same thing, and I thought this is a really nice. You talked about like having more ambition, like that. I really like the way, I've forgotten exactly how you languaged it. Maybe you can remember, but you sort of were saying that like just trying these things out, you're constantly having to push yourself to have more ambition, to do stuff that you wouldn't have thought was possible. And then time and time again, at least for me, time and time again, I'm like blown away that wow, it works, right? It can do it. Like, I kind of thought like, okay, because the last model, or because at some point I tried something, it didn't work. And this whole idea of ambition, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, no, it's, I think about this all the time, which is like the models, to your point from before, like if you haven't tried the thing in the last 6 months, like
Even in the last 2 weeks.
even the last 2 weeks,
like
yeah, it's like you historically had to be like very precise about what you wanted AI to do for you. And I think the models have crossed the chasm where like instead of asking for one thing, you can now ask for 30 things. And the model can actually do that. Like you don't need to, like, we're artificially hampering what the technology is capable of because we're like trying to not let it fumble over itself, which it used to do in certain cases. And so I think about this all the time. And I actually think the other thread of that story is like, I now feel this weight on my shoulders because like it's not that the model, like I can't be like, oh well, the model can't do it, so like it's fine, I'm just not gonna, like, now the sort of like weight is on me, the onus is on me to be like, I really could build this.
Right.
And so now there's an interesting, like, I'm always at least for like, actually for like internal work stuff, I'm like, oh shit, there's some bug in AI Studio, I should be the one to go fix it. Like I can't be like, oh sorry, I'll just bank on the engineering team going and solving this problem. Like it feels like the responsibility falls on me. The same thing is true for like external projects where I'm now like, the bar is high in my mind for what I will actually go spend build as a side project. And it just means like, I almost need more time than before. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy, which is like, you'd expect because the models are so capable, like, now I'm just doing something in like an hour over the weekend. Instead, I'm like, my idea is 20 times as ambitious. I'm like, okay, I'm going to need to take a week off. Yeah, I got 20 ideas. I'm going to take a week off of work in order to pull this thing off because like I'm able to be so ambitious. And I actually know that it's another thing that's changed. It's like, I know in my heart of hearts that like I can actually pull it off. I think before there was like I always had this question of like, am I going to go down trying to build this thing and then realize 30% of the way in that like I don't have the technical capability to pull this off, and like I don't feel that way anymore. And so it's like I'm kind of, it's an interesting experience to like go through this and like turn that chapter. And I think we'll all have more of these types of experiences over the next 12 to 18 months as the models become more capable.
I definitely find that myself too, that just things like sort of multiplayer games or multiplayer apps and stuff like that. You think like, okay, that's a pretty hard thing to code. I'm going to have to read up stuff.
That's one prompt in AI Studio.
Yes,
one prompt,
right?
Literally.
One of the other things I wanted to ask, and this is going back, I guess, to something you had talked about, the whole sort of next billion users, right? Yeah. So I have some people on my team who are not coders, right? But I make sure that they, build is awesome for that, right? I basically say, here, open this, build something, right? Try something out. I find that they're making software that I would have never thought to make, right? This is one of the things that's fundamental, and at least to me, right? And then I find myself sort of constantly going, how did you make that, right?
Yeah.
And then I find that, okay, actually it wasn't that complicated. They had a conversation that described what they want, but it just, are you seeing things like that?
100%. I think it's, there's better quotes than I'll be able to remember, but there's so many things about like, intelligence is like so distributed across the globe, and like great ideas are so distributed across. The thing that hasn't been distributed is opportunity.
Right.
And I think what is exciting to me is like, I fundamentally believe the reason that it's important to build these types of products is because like we're putting the means of opportunity in the hands of people who wouldn't otherwise have been able to build this thing.
Totally
and
agree.
It's going to be like a fun, like the creation of software, at least today, is like fundamentally the most economically empowering thing that you could possibly do. And that's why people learn how to write code and historically all that stuff. And now putting that in the hands of this cohort that couldn't before is going to be, we're already seeing the impact of it. There's like millions of these people using AI Studio to do this and other products. And I think we're like chapter one of that story, which is really exciting. Like we're like an AI Studio, I think, has this responsibility to now, as the ability to create software actually gets solved. Like I'm fully convinced, the next 12 months, you'll be able to build whatever software you want. What are the next set of challenges to like actually help you build that thing that you want to build. Like it's actually, it won't be software. It'll be 15 other things. And so we're already starting to think about like, what are the next 15 other things that we need to make sure that you can do and do them in AI Studio, use the Google ecosystem and make that all super seamless.
How do you design, like, for me, AI Studio is AI.dev. So if people don't know the shortcut, that's what I always...
AI.studio as well.
Right, AI.studio too, yes. But the funny thing is, I'm reminded by the AI.dev is that what is a dev nowadays?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's the tension. And actually, I think we feel this tension a lot in AI Studio sort of as a product, because AI Studio is the front door to the APIs as well.
Right.
So if you want to build with Gemini and you don't have to vibe code in AI Studio, you can just take the API, go build off platform if you want, use whatever coding models, use whatever tech stack you want. And we have this sort of like dual identity now as like a builder product and as a deeply developer product. Like there's truly like millions of actual businesses built on top of the APIs that we have. And so we're always walking this fine line. And I think it's definitely a transition. And so we're trying to like walk the line as much as possible during this transition. But like it's tough because like we want to build the powerful tool, to your point before, like developers who don't know how to do front end stuff or don't want to do it, like you can come do that in AI Studio, and we want to meet them where they are. We also want to enable this generation of people who like don't have any code, don't even ever want to look at a single line of code. It's really tough. It's like it's hard work to try to find the balance.
I can see that's definitely a challenge. Okay, so let's talk about some models, right? Yeah. My background's in deep learning, big believer in LLMs. It's now about 4 months since Gemini 3 came out.
December 2025.
We've seen 3.1 come along. Definitely the powerhouse of those seems to be getting better and better and better. The other thing that's fascinating too, though, is that, and I think this goes back even to the original Gemini, people didn't really understand what multimodal meant, right? And they didn't understand the consequences of that. I feel now with like the new live voice mode, all these other things. You want to talk about a little bit about perhaps live voice? What's the state of that now?
Yeah, so we rolled out, I think it was last year actually at I/O, our first live model, and it gives the ability to like stream audio and video and text directly to the model and get responses back in real time. And I think this enables a bunch of these like real-time, omnipresent use cases. It's actually really cool. I think it's like AI.studio/live, and you can sort of try out that experience. But I think the use case that I think we were seeing a ton of traction with initially, which is interesting to think about, is like literally screen sharing with an agent. It sees everything that you see, and then you can sort of just ask it questions. And we've seen customers like, I have a really complicated product experience, and like I'm a non-technical user trying to use, an e-commerce platform. How do I set up a custom domain name? And like, I don't know how to navigate through the product and find it. And literally the live model can like walk you through and be like, click, and you can do cool things like add overlays and stuff like that to be like, click here and then go to this section and do that. And you can imagine, I think that like omnipresent tutor or helper is really exciting. I actually think we're going to do some interesting stuff around vibe coding too, to like help you, your one-click thought partner to like see everything that you see and help you debug problems is something that we're thinking about, but the model is so capable.
It definitely seems amazing, just the personalization of where it can meet you where you're at. So it's not like I'm watching a YouTube video where I have to get through the first 30 minutes to go, yeah, I know all that stuff. And now, okay, this is the 3 minutes, like you said, you can just power it up, say, hey, I don't know which button does this. Yeah. And it will tell you. I had a really interesting experience with that last year, just after I/O, when it first came out, that where I was staying in San Francisco, the refrigerator broke down, because of a filter. I'm like, I have no idea about this. So I opened this thing up, and it looked at it knew exactly what refrigerator it was.
That's awesome.
It knew what the warning button was. It told me I had to change the filter, told me where the filter was, and sure enough, within sort of 10 minutes, I'd ordered one from Amazon. The next day I had it changed and it was done.
That's so cool.
And that would have, that was just amazing for me at the time.
I'll share my experience. Actually, JD, who's walking past right now, who's on our team at Google, we were doing a bunch of Astra demos, which was the sort of precursor to Gemini Live. And this was, I think, at I/O 2024, maybe, when we first started showcasing Astra in sort of early forms. And I don't know if folks know those like very fancy coffee machines where there's like handles and you like do all the things separately. I'm like, I don't, I'm a very simple coffee drinker. And every time I see those machines, I'm like, okay, I'll go find a bottled coffee or something because I don't know how this works. I opened up Astro, the precursor to this, and to Gemini Live, and was asking like, what do I actually do? And I'm like showing the machine. It's like, okay, put your hand on this handle, twist it, pull it down, go here, and like literally like zero shot just worked. And I was like, oh, okay, I actually know how to do this thing now.
It really is insane.
It's very cool.
I find so many people don't know it too. When you pull it out and just suddenly show them, they're like, whoa,
it's magic.
It is magic.
It's interesting you say that. I think we should talk about our text-to-speech model as well, which I think is more widely adopted because I think developers really understand that use case. This like generate audio synthetically, I think makes sense. There's a ton of use cases. I think the challenge for Live has been, it's a new paradigm. And so there isn't like there wasn't something else you were using before. What you were using before was like a combination of like 50 different things. And so I think from like a product market fit perspective, it's been interesting to see like who is adopting this thing. We've had to do a lot of education to sort of help people understand those use cases. But I think we're like finally, it's starting to make its way into like everyday products, and I think people will understand.
I find that people, developers especially, don't have no clue that it can do function calling, that it can use, search,
maps,
and all those things that are suddenly, even though it's voice, it's still able to then do the model's voice is still able to do function calling.
The magic
return things back.
Yeah, that's the magic. Is because like you can really use it as like a home assistant product. I think that's how a lot of folks do it. My favorite thing is like an omnipresent like help button. Like you're somebody who's just like, you're stuck somewhere on the internet, you click that button, all of a sudden like there's a person over your shoulder with your consent that's like, it can see what you see, you can talk to it, and sort of help guide you through whatever you're trying to do. I think that's a magical experience that I don't think is like widely diffused in the ecosystem, and there's lots of alpha in building this.
For sure. Another magic model, Nano Banana.
Huge
moment. It's only gotten better since it first sort of,
indeed,
come along. Where do you see models like that going, and what?
Yeah, I think the Gen Media portfolio.
Yeah, and then I guess we can talk about VO and stuff
VO,
as well.
Lyria, everything else has just been incredible. I think it's been like a shining light of the Gemini story. It's actually back to what you mentioned before. I think it's tied to the multimodal story because when you have really great multimodal understanding, it lets you actually build a really great multimodal generation model. I think the direction of travel is like consolidation in the offerings as far as Gen Media goes. So I think like we've done a ton of these bespoke Gen Media models. I think hopefully we'll see sort of a lot of that come into the mainline version of Gemini in the future, which is really exciting. And I think we've got a lot of different, like we have the live model, we have the TTS model, we have Nano Banana, we have VO, we have Lyria. So there's a lot of different models. And I think it introduces some complexity. And
even though there's a lot of different models, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's still fundamentally the Gemini sort of, key models, and its knowledge is what makes things like being able to reason over images in Nano Banana so cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. I think there's like a slightly different training mixture and like a slightly
different head or something when it comes out.
Slightly different architecture, but like all the base, which is actually great. It's what makes it possible for us to take n number of research bets like this. Is like conceptually what we're doing for these models is actually really, really similar. There are changes, and then the tension becomes like, what happens when you fuse these things together into a single model? There's some gains in certain places, there's definitely some losses in others, and so there's been a huge amount of research as far as like, how do you actually bring it all together, which is exciting.
That's super interesting. Any other new models that you want to announce for us on this live stream? Just casually drop that.
There's lots of great things. I think I see all the tweets, lots of people looking for new models, which is exciting. I think we're pushing the rock up the hill on coding. I think there's huge amount of investment happening from us to make a great coding model. I think we've got tons of products that will benefit from us. Our customers want this, so lots of stuff coming. Hopefully we'll have more to share on coding stuff soon.
Coming soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
So speaking of coding, anti-gravity also came out with 3.0. Has really had a lot of good feedback around it, and I'm amazed that team is just sort of getting started, right? I've seen some of the things that they're doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that's influenced maybe AI Studio and vice versa? You're in this interesting sort of situation where you've got these amazing teams working on very sort of unique things, but the lessons that they learn go across multiple areas.
And I think this is actually, to your point, this is the beauty for Google is like, I think the anti-gravity team is doing an incredible job, not only in that product side, but actually like really close to research and helping push the rock up the hill from a coding model perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. And the benefits and the things that they're learning are diffusing across many Google products. So AI Studio is a great example of this. The coding agent harness is actually powered by the same anti-gravity harness. So behind the scenes, we're using like literally the same binary as what's being used. So I think you'll see more of this sort of like cross-Google diffusion of the technology, and Google and AI Studio and DeepMind are making a huge bet on the anti-gravity team and the work that they're doing in order to like bring this to more developers, which is super exciting. So I think to your point, it's like it feels like chapter one of that story still, and it's gonna be fun to see all the new stuff that they end up landing.
That they start rolling out. Just speaking quickly, one of the things that the community is frustrated, I think, with anti-gravity is just like the fact of the quota, the lack of.
I see the tweets.
So I'm sure you do. So we saw new TPUs announced last night, right?
Yeah.
And this morning. Pretty amazing architecture.
Yeah.
About 3x more for the inference and stuff like that. Is that going to help to be able to serve more sort of Gemini models for anti-gravity and stuff?
Yeah, there's definitely, first of all, like I acknowledge the sort of like tension that folks have and a lot of
This is the problem with being so popular, right?
It is. It actually is like it's a death by success story, which I think there's, we have way more demand across actually not even just anti-gravity, but across like every Google product surface that's landing AI stuff. Like there's just way more demand than there is supply in order to do this. So trying to be really intentional, trying to be transparent with people, trying to make sure that like we get the models in the hands of our paying customers. There's a bunch of trade-offs. And so it's not going to be perfect in every instance, but we really are trying to make sure that it lands. Like the reason we do all of this is to make sure that the models end up in the hands of people and that it benefits them. And so
I get frustrated reading some of those tweets where I think you don't think if they could that they would actually.
We're trying. Yeah, it's tough, and I think there's a lot of prioritization trade-off questions, and I think that's where a lot of the tension is. And I think there's actually like a macro, like stepping back, like separate from our products, but just like as an ecosystem, I think over the next 2 to 3 years we're going to go through this challenge, which is like there's going to be so much demand for this technology, and there already is. There's so much pent-up demand. How is everyone going to go through this trade-off exercise of like, you probably will end up with a fixed amount of tokens, and like, where do you deploy the tokens in your own life, in your business, all of those, like that's very much the reality of what's going to happen. And so finding those high value use cases, finding those examples of like where you can actually move the needle and get like a huge amount of leverage, I think is going to be the next era of this. Instead of just like throwing AI at everything, I think you're going to have to be more intentional about doing it in the highest value cases because there's so much demand for the models.
Interesting. So
even with Google spending tons of money to build TPUs, like we can
announced 100 and something billion.
All the money is being spent on TPUs, and it's still there's still a huge amount of demand.
Wow. You mentioned like coding does seem to be where it's at the moment, right?
100%.
For like sort of like, and I'm curious to know. Okay, what's the second thing going to be? Right, so like coding I get because all the labs benefit from being, getting better coding models means everyone can improve the models, can improve what they're building, that kind of thing. It does seem really interesting to see what other areas of society are going to have these big impacts. And I think people have sort of proposed ideas. What do you see? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think robotics is at this crossroads that I think a lot of the coding models were probably at, 18 months ago. So I think we're probably like 18 months from maybe 12 months from like a bunch of these significant breakthroughs. And I think it's just because like the intelligence that we're packing in some of these new systems is just like so high that it just covers a lot of the edge cases that existed before. So I'm excited for that. I think there's like, as a customer who's pre-ordered a bunch of these robotics products, I'm very excited. I hope those teams all pull it off. And there's a ton of stuff actually happening in the Gemini side from our robotics. We have a huge amount of partnerships with Boston Dynamics and others to sort of power a bunch of these next-gen experiences. So I think that field, I could be off by another 6 months or something like that, but it feels like it's ripe to actually happen. I think the other one is long-running agents. And I sat down with Jeff Dean earlier today, and sort of, if you look at the frontier of how long you can let an agent run without a human in the loop today, it's like, depending on the use case, it looks different, but it's on the order of hours. I think as we look at the next 12 months, it is truly going to be on the order of like days or weeks. And there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done in order to enable that, but I think that is the direction that we're going. The models will go out and do the things they need to do a lot longer without human intervention, which is exciting.
What are the big things? I'm guessing research is one of the sort of big ones, and that's the first agent, right, on Gemini. Actually, is deep research. And you just updated this week. I still haven't had a chance to read the blog post.
It's good. It's good. Read the blog post. So we back in December we released the Interactions API, and as part of the Interactions API, we sort of brought this concept of like models and agents both being first-class citizens of the API experience. And so we launched with deep research initially. Last week we just rolled out with 2 new versions of deep research and deep research max, which sort of pushes even farther and goes deeper and is sort of more rigorous. And I think all of this is laying the groundwork for sort of letting developers create their own agents in the Gemini API, in addition to a bunch of like new hosted agents from Google, which we'll bring to the world, which is really exciting. So I think we're seeing that. We've been laying the groundwork to make this happen. And the thing that I really am excited about is like using the same underlying API for models and agents. I think as developers sort of make this transition from interacting with raw models to actually working with agents, we're trying to make that seamless. And I think by having it like sort of side by side in the API and literally side by side in the UI, now you can see models and agents trying to sort of meet folks where they are.
Do you think that that's this generation sort of Gmail? Like Google became really famous because of Gmail. I'm not talking about just the communication aspect, but I mean, as a product, that was sort of like a boom. Everyone had Gmail, right? Within a year or so.
Yeah.
And it does seem to me that like, as some of these agent things start to get roll out, people are going to be talking about, my Google agent or my Gemini agent, that do this, and this, and whatever, or maybe people give them names, whatever.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's something a change there, right?
Indeed, yeah, I agree with you. I think that the corollary is maybe like every product is going to become agentic, and so I think that will be like maybe the only reason what you're saying is not true is like Gmail.
Just Gmail becomes an agent.
Just becomes an agent, and like just like all the other stuff becomes like Google search, or like Google is an agent, or many agents obviously. So it'll be interesting to see like the foundational pieces all become agentic, which I think is the direction that we're going.
All right, that's fascinating. So, okay, let's start to wrap it up. What I wanted to ask you also was like, okay, so you've now experienced working at a couple of different companies in this field. You've been at the forefront, though, probably for at least the last 6 years, 7 years?
Yeah.
Maybe longer? A little bit longer. What are you most excited about? You mentioned the robotic stuff, and the point I wanted to make about that is in many ways that's just another modality, right?
Yeah.
This is where Gemini is being used, and there are some really good fine tunes of Gemini for robots and stuff. What are the things what are the things that you 3 years ago you thought we'll never do that, right, in my lifetime? Like I find myself constantly looking at things that were research problems, 6-7 years ago. And they're just done now, right? And they're just solved to the point where there's really not that much point of even doing sort of research in that particular, like a specific kind of NLP or something like that kind of thing.
I think I have a hypothesis, and I think it's what our team's spending a bunch of time thinking about, which is like similar to what happened with YouTube in the internet era, the sort of like early internet area where everyone was able to become a creator. I think that's happening with software. And I think so we're thinking about this similar to like how YouTube actually thought about building a platform and an ecosystem for creators.
Right.
Now everyone's a builder. Everyone can build. And the technology is enabling that to happen. And there's there's so much breadth and such a long tail of like actually pulling that story off. But it's what we're spending a lot of time thinking about. And it's also like emotionally the thing that gets me most excited, because I think you look at this group of people who like have not had the means to contribute in this software economy, and bringing those, there's like so many, I actually work with lots of these people, so many smart people at Google, even as an example, who like are right next to the software, who haven't historically
the
created
coders,
software.
right?
And we have
Right.
someone on my team, Harrison, who is incredible and like does a bunch more growth stuff. Like he's now like the #2 token consumer and is like building all of these like really cool internal, had never written a single line of code in his life 6 months ago, and is now building all of these really cool internal tools like shipping landing pages, making product experiences in AI Studio. And I think we're just scratching the surface of like that becoming widely distributed in the economy. And I think when that happens, like we actually will see this like phase change transition of like what the world looks like as more people build software. And I think it's going to be for the better, which is really exciting. And we'll also, I think I'll make my last comment, which is I think it will also increase the demand for traditional developers. I think is the other thing. I think a lot of people look at these things as mutually exclusive.
Right.
I think it's very positive sum. Like as this total addressable market of the number of people making software increases, it increases the demand for developers because there will be a stopping point of like how far you can go if you don't understand all the detail of how this technology works. And so there'll be a lot more cases where people want to go farther and they need a developer to partner with, and they need that technical co-founder or whatever it is. So I think that direction is really positive and it's exciting.
How do we deal with like the doomers, or from what you're describing, society is going to change, right? I think it's changed pretty much all the time for the last at least 100 years or so. It's clearly going to change. Things like education are going to have to change, the whole sort of systems around those things. How do we sort of, as sort of professionals in this AI industry or something, sort of convince people that it's not like everyone's going to die. It's not like, everyone's sort of, so you get these really hardcore doomers, which seem to get a lot of publicity and stuff like that. But they're not seeing all these opportunities. They're not seeing all these things going on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel this this sense of responsibility that our team has. Like the DeepMind mission is build AI and make sure it benefits humanity. And I think the way that we do that is like deploying the technology. And I think the way that people should rightfully be skeptical of many things that are happening in the world. The way that you sort of meet people where they are, if they're skeptical, is like build technology, deploy it, show it, and let them use it. And like there's no better way to have the conversation than being able to put your hands on the technology. And I think we have that deployment first sort of mindset as far as what our team is doing in AI Studio, and doing it with urgency, because I think there is like, if you wait too long, society goes through that transition and then people sort of didn't have the chance to sort of have the conversation and understand. So I think it's super important. It's why we have an incredible developer advocacy relations team who's like trying to, and now like builder relations, trying to like bring the technology to the world so that folks really understand what's happening. It's super important.
On that note, I think we'll finish up. That's awesome. Thank you for the conversation. It's fascinating to see where things are going. Fascinating to hear what you're working on. Sounds like you got a lot of cool stuff coming soon.
Lots of cool stuff coming.
Anything else you want to leave with people with?
I think the only last thing I'll say is like, if you have feedback, please send it to us. Like we're trying to push the rock up the hill. If you
paper
need
cuts, anything, right?
anything, paper cuts, features, whatever it is, ping us, email, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is, however you best mail, send us a fax, and we'll make AI Studio better for your use case. So please keep the feedback coming. Thank you for doing this, Sam. Thanks for coming to Next and flying all the way here.
Thank you for joining us today. It's been fascinating. And thank you to everyone who's been listening. I'm sure you'll see Logan at future things going forward, and there's a lot more content coming in next as well.
I love it. Thank you all.
Bye.